All right, we're just waiting for the live stream to start and for a little bit of verification on my end. As you can see, the title of this is Area 51 by Jacobsen. It's a book. My thoughts and whims on the subject. I typed out all my notes, which I took by hand while I was reading the book. And the book is this one right here. It's pretty thick, but you know what? Actually, a giant portion of the book is notes. Probably like the last 100 pages or so, index, and the references are quite extensive, quite deep. So anyway, feel free to throw questions in the chat as we go. I'm going to pull the chat up here on my iPad, and hopefully I can respond to the chat on the iPad that way, and see your guys' comments coming through, because I have a few screens going right now. So anyway, this is the book. She's written many others. Project Paperclip she wrote, and then also Phenomenon. But this is the one I'm going to be going over, and I'll try and be as specific as I can as to what my interpretations and thoughts are versus what are claimed facts in her non-fiction book. Okay, so this is non-fiction, and we all know that the truth can be scarier than fiction. So with that, I will start into my notes. And again, some of these notes are pure conjecture, and so if I'm not looking at the camera most of the time, it's because I'm reading off my notes. I kind of pre-wrote this so I can not lose my space, but it is kind of jumbled all around. It does jump around quite a bit because I did use a lot of highlighter, and I did take a lot of notes, and I did skip through the book, like back to what I had previously read while I was reading. So if you have any questions, again, just go to the chat, ask the questions. I'll try to answer them in the chat. Through the live stream, I won't type them back, but I will acknowledge you the best that I can. So without any further ado, here we go. And then also, please let me know how the sound and my voice come across the live stream here. I got a new microphone, as you can see, and a new setup. So anyway, again, much of what I'm going to be going over is nonfiction and facts from her research, interviews, deathbed confessions, and other sources that are cited by Jacobsen, which is, again, a very lengthy citation towards the back of the book. So first off, my first question as reading, these are questions I have myself. So a lot of what I'm going to be saying and speaking to you are questions that I had that my mind came up with while I was reading, and conjecture while I was reading. So again, I'll try to point out the facts. So first off, why did Bob Lazar conduct so many foreign interviews, beyond the obvious reasons of fame and notoriety? Well, some would say COINTELPRO, but for instance, there were over 30 million Japanese viewers on one segment alone. And so that represents nearly 10% of the U.S. population. Now, I'm not sure about you, but do 1 in 10 Americans know who Bob Lazar is, much less how much do they know about Bob Lazar? Do they know as much as those 30 million Japanese people that heard him, as well as all the other people that heard the various interviews with Bob Lazar during the course of his disclosure in the 90s? And how many people know his name up until today? It's 2021. It's December 6th. So we did recently have the Jeremy Corbell documentary that was made. And that obviously gave him a big boost, and his name's been in the public mind lately a lot more than it has been in the past, for a few reasons, like Element 115 becoming a thing in the 20-teens, the bone scanner in the hand, a few other things that have kind of vindicated some of his claims from way back then. But that's a good question. So a lot of people think that Bob Lazar is counterintelligence, part of a program for counterintelligence, and even Bob Lazar has speculated himself whether it was on purpose or because he really thinks this and thinks that he was COINTELPRO. So when I say COINTELPRO, it just means counterintelligence program, which is planned obfuscation or planned cover-up or planned misdirection of the facts. So one thing that we're going to skip to is the original U.S. Army report of the crash at Roswell. So if you're familiar with the Roswell crash, there was a local newspaper that reported what the Army initially said was a UFO disc-shaped crash that crash-landed in the desert of New Mexico. Well, right after that, the Air Force and the powers that be went and collected all the stuff, took it to a guy's home and said, "This is a weather balloon, isn't it?" And, "Oh yeah, it's a weather balloon, blah, blah, blah." Right. So anyway, it wasn't a weather balloon. It was, in fact, a UFO disc-shaped craft. So, this is where we start to unravel the fiction from the real truth. So it is fact, there was a UFO that crashed in the New Mexico desert near Roswell. And an additional fact that many of you may not know, it was one of 2 crashes. So back to Bob Lazar real quick. He was never detained, arrested, or imprisoned. So that's a pretty big deal. That's a fact. He claims to have been, he was fired from his job, tailed, threatened. He said they tried to kill him. He carried an Uzi, which I thought was kind of weird, but it is Nevada, I guess. But any attempt to kill or imprison Bob would have been akin to admitting the reality of the situation. So obviously, since he came public, that really did maybe save his life. Or again, part of a COINTELPRO, or managing, I guess you could say, the narrative. Allowing him to live and label him as crazy was kind of a perfect cover for the time, for the COINTELPRO of the time. Now, time marches on, so programs change, needs change, information gets out. Internet in the 90s kind of blew everything up. But back to the crash, child coffins were ordered following those crashes for the occupants of the crash. Now, moving on a little bit, War of the Worlds. Now, H.G. Wells wrote War of the Worlds in the 19th century, and Orson Welles, a radio man, did a live enactment of the book that threw America into hysteria. Literally, large swaths of America didn't know that it was a play, a screenwrite based on the book for the radio to be dramatic, and people who tuned in, beyond the initial broadcast that saying this is just a dramatized broadcast, thought it was real. So this doesn't show a great. This doesn't paint the American populace in a really great light as far as discerning truth from fiction or relying on reliable news sources, and definitely doesn't make us look great in the eyes of our rivals or adversaries. So if you're an adversary of the U.S. and you're watching the United States public go crazy over a fictional broadcast based on a book, that might not be such a good indication of the American psyche at the time. Getting back to the War of the Worlds and the description of the craft, there have always been cylindrical tic-tac, or back then cookie tubes shaped craft have been in the American psyche for a really long time, much longer than you think, definitely in the 19th century, the 1800s. Now, Orson's broadcast of H.G.'s book. Now, I don't think it's any coincidence about having the same last name, different spelling. I think there's more to that than coincidence, and I think names have a huge part to play in all of our reality. Sussman and current news, that sort of thing. It's very deep as far as names go. But beyond that, the Orson's broadcast is kind of like an impetus for conducting some of the first studies and reports that are akin to what many know as like the Brookings Report, which Project Blue Book stemmed from. So that's the actual program of COINTELPRO and gaslighting conducted by the U.S. government against the U.S. citizenry. And a lot of people will remember things from, again, shows on TV where they explain away the UFO sightings as swamp gas or an owl behind a light or whatever the heck it happened to be. Dr. Hynek would go out there and explain it away, and people would just buy it because, people watch Brian Stelter and buy his garbage too. So, go figure. Anyway, getting back to that, why would Russia even dare losing one stop-and-hover aircraft? So, the reason why I bring this up is the UFO that crash-landed in the desert was a stop-and-hover vehicle. What that means is it had a mass reduction device contained inside it that shows no immediate signs of propulsion or exhaust, and the seemingly mysterious ability to be able to just stop and hover without propellers, without moving any air, like a helicopter or something like that. So totally outside the bounds of conventional craft. Now, the reason why I say Russian is because it had Cyrillic embossment in the inside of the craft. So Cyrillic letters, ancient Cyrillic or Russian language, stamped or engraved on the inside of the craft, which is interesting. So we can dive a little bit more into the embossment or the engraving later. However, it seems kind of weird that one would crash right next to where we need it to crash. So it could have crashed anywhere else, but it crashed in the perfect spot, if that makes any sense to you. So what I get that is, why drop one in America? Well, remember, 1947 is when the Roswell crash occurred, and it was July 8th or something like that. And so this is, a couple years after the end of World War II. So, definitely Project Paperclip was in swing, and the United States and Russia, the powers that be, Great Britain, did collect and find and bring back a lot of German technology. And just so you know, the Germans were far ahead of where we were at the time. We just had the whole world against them, and they didn't have, who knows, maybe enough of that secret technology. And that was the reason for Paperclip. We wanted to take their riches of mines and bring them over to the United States. So why drop one in America? Well, consider the Reagan speech or Independence Day speech from the president then, the reasoning to be able to unite the world against a common enemy. Well, who would that common enemy be? I think that's, escaped Germans, extraterrestrials, whether they're from this continent or from a different planet, or demonic entities, disembodied entities. Who knows where these craft really came from, who really made them, how they truly operate, and what it takes to operate them. So there's just a lot of conjecture. I'm not going to get super into that conjecture, but let's just be real here. The Earth is supposedly, according to science, 4.5 billion years old, and since the Renaissance and the Industrial Revolution, call it 400 years. We've gotten this far, and I'm holding cell phones, talking to microphone to the world on YouTube. Come on, folks, let's be real. Everything that's in science fiction has already been invented and probably created at some point. And, you look back into the ancient past with pyramids and all the rest. Parts, out-of-place artifacts. Research this stuff for yourself if you don't know what I'm talking about, or if you don't believe me so much. So anyway, the implications are extremely wide, and it could be a combination of Germans, ancient breakaway civilizations, aliens. Who knows? It could be singular or combinations. Nothing's mutually exclusive. So I want you guys, as we're talking about this, to not have mutually exclusive minds. More than one thing can be true at once, and that's more commonly the case than mutually exclusive instances. So the common enemy, could that be demonic Germans? Could it be breakaway Germans? Could it be breakaway Russians? Could it be previous civilization aliens? Who knows? But it sure seems like it, because why would Russia seemingly drop one of these aircraft above one of our most top secret bases, unless they were trying to spy on it? Now, Occam's razor suggests they were trying to spy on what we had going on, and we knocked it down. I mean, it could be that easy, but I don't tend to give the military and their redundancy and the way that they cover stuff up with shit sandwich conspiracy for everyone, I don't give them that much credit. So, I mean, odds are, with a lot of the media and stuff like that, there might be a common enemy. I mean, we all know there's a common enemy. It's evil. So if you want to call the common enemy evil, I'd be down with that. So anyway, in World War II, we had Foo Fighters, which is interesting. And, the Germans are known to have replication craft of their own, or reverse engineered craft, or craft that they were helped to engineer. So I think kind of one of their cover-up items is the Die Glocken or the Bell. I mean, if they had Hanabu and they had Vril, then the Bell is really just the cover story, kind of like the SR-71. I mean, every civilization is going to have their cover-up stories, and the stories meant for the general public. I mean, the Bell might have been real, but why make a stupid Bell thing that acts like a retarded craft in the air when you have Hanabu and when you have Vril, which are your typical UFO discs and your typical bigger Tic Tacs. Okay, so the Vril being the Tic Tac, which the Hanabu deploys from, and the Hanabu being the smaller UFO disc-shaped objects. Okay, so anyway, a few possibilities. Russia knew we didn't have stop and hover, but needed our help to reverse engineer the craft and technology. I mean, this makes sense considering Admiral Byrd's complete and utter failure in Antarctica. Look up Project High Jump. This makes sense in a lot of ways. The Cyrillic could be genuine from an ancient breakaway alien civilization, or it could be Russia. Hey, this is ours now. Let's freaking stamp some ancient Cyrillic in there and create a ruse or a diversion. Now, again, that could be true, and other things could be true, because the Russians might not want us knowing where they got it, if they got it from the Russians, or if Bob Lazar says some of our UFO craft were from archaeological digs, but not all of them were. So, as time marches on, the ultimate in craft is going to be the ultimate in craft forever. So whether it was a 100,000-year-old dug-up UFO, well, that ultimate technology is still going to be the ultimate technology and will be for time eternal, right? So the ability to stop and hover, or maybe blink out of one dimension of space and appear in another dimension of space instantaneously, like they talk about in all the movies, where you fold a piece of paper, poke the hole through it with a pencil, and then stretch the space back out, and then you're on the other side of space. I mean, there's so many ways we could look at it, but really just want to stay at the base here, because if we get too far in the weeds, there's just too much speculation. We just talk about what we know. The crafts did crash land. They did have stop and hover technology. And that's what you really need to know right now. So beyond the possibilities. So it could also be, again, like I said, super secret cover. Those were covering the aircraft, right? So there was a, even reported a religious priest that offered, final words and prayers to one of the entities that died on the scene. So there's going to be a lot of people involved with the crash itself, the recovery of the material, and things like that. So, I mean, the Russian Cyrillic embossment might have just been for those people picking all that shit up and transferring it to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, right? So you have to have a cover story for the population. You have to have a cover story for the people that aren't in that compartmentalized portion. You're going to have a cover story for them. You're going to have a cover story for them. And then you're going to have the truth, right? So there's a layer of conspiracy and cover sandwich here. And you're not going to know which layers are true and which aren't. You just will know what the baseline truth is. Right, but just consider those recovering the aircraft aren't necessarily going to be clued into the know anyway. If they see Russian writing, they're just going to think it's Russian, or that it's Russian recovered German craft, which could be German recovered alien craft, or German invented, or however it got built and created, there's Russian stamped on it, and the person picking it up thinks it's Russian, right? Okay, so again, there were 2 crashes. No one just ever heard about the second crash. Again, stop and hover exists. I'm going to repeat that over and over and over. Stop and hover exists. And it has huge implications, because what that means is we've only been allowed to have conventional propulsion since then. Like, there's rules on our way of life across the Earth, right? Across the technology of all of Earth. Again, no nuclear bombs have been dropped in war since World War II, and we've had quite a few opportunities to do that. And again, the government, with all the shitty stuff they do, somebody way above them is dictating the use of nukes, because they've done a lot of other shitty stuff that they're not supposed to do beyond the Nuremberg Code and things like that. So, really until very recently, conventional craft and means of propulsion has been the only legitimized way of propulsion. Stealth came out through the 80s with the stealth bomber, and then F-117 Nighthawk later than that. But just very, very, very recently did Dr. Pi have the patents released with the U.S. Navy in regards to inertial mass reduction device in coordination with a craft. Okay, so the general public, if you want to look now, you can just go onto Google patents and look up inertial mass reduction. Okay, so if you want to read all about it, go there and look up inertial mass reduction. Department of the Defense, U.S. Navy, Dr. Salvatore Caesar Pi, P-A-I-S, not P-I-E, it's P-A-I-S. So some dots to connect here. The description of the aliens from the War of the Worlds, the H.G. Wells book, is akin to Kronos and Kanos from the famous cartoon show The Simpsons. So this show is widely known to be somewhat prophetic in its illustrations of the future. So the biggest is Trump's escalator scene, all the way down to just the guy dropping the sign, who's on that floor as he's going down. The guy drops the sign. I mean, the guy literally drops the sign in the Simpsons cartoon, and then many, many, many years later, Trump's going down the escalator as the president-elect, and the sign drops. Okay, so it's a complete, accurate foretelling of the future, and it's not the only time The Simpsons has done that, and it's beyond coincidence now for most people. And if you look into it and you go back, or if you watch the episodes when they originally debuted, you will know this. Okay, this is not conspiracy, this is fact. I hate to tell you, if you can't take it, that's too bad for you. But in addition to child coffins being ordered for the entities that were recovered from the Roswell crash site, there were already medical stasis tubes with special Jello-like liquid prepped and ready for the kids' arrival at Wright Pat. Now, I want to make a disclaimer here for all of you. We're going to get into some really scary, awful, nasty stuff. So if you have children that are watching this, or if you get squeamish, or if you have anxiety attacks or anything like this, I mean, talking about this stuff gives me anxiety attacks too. I mean, it's nuts. Like, you listen to Alex Jones, he says he needs to take a break. I might need even to take a break because I have kids, and this stuff is hard, okay? It's hard. It's really hard, okay? So I'm just giving you your forewarning, okay? But the kids' arrival at Wright Pat. Now, Bob Lazar also uses this reference as to kids, and we'll get into that in a moment. But this is shown, actually in recent shows like Project Blue Book, where they detail the events of Robert, I think it's Dr. Hynek. I don't know, I can't remember his first name. But then also, they also detail this in some other movies, like Independence Day. You see the big cylindrical tube, and essentially the being goes inside it, gets hooked up to a bunch of cables, and it's on a stasis-style life support, okay? So when this UFO crashed at Roswell, and they picked up the bodies, and they had the priest there, and then they took the other bodies to Wright-Patterson. They already had the tubes with the Jello substance and all the things hooked up, ready for them to be received. Okay, so that's a little scary, and what that means is that the U.S. was essentially doing the same thing. Okay, we'll get to the thing here in a moment. Segue into the 20th century. We'll talk about the word democide. If you don't know what democide is, it's government killing people. Okay, democide, war and disease, viruses made by man. Virologists from Germany, paperclip scientists. Fauci's probably a paperclip baby, Nazi. I mean, honestly, caused more than 50 million deaths in the 20th century. And I don't know if you can even imagine what society would look like without having lost this many people. Especially, think about all the great minds that didn't get a chance to live. All the bravest men, all the strongest men, all the men with the biggest will to fight in World War II, lots of them gone. Their genes are going to be wiped from history. Hopefully some of them had kids, a lot of them didn't. Many people that fought were teenagers. So, we're told that the world population was smaller in the past, but I don't know if this is true. How many people were freaking killed in the 18th and 19th and 20th centuries? We are hearing about the Great Reset with Klaus Schwab and all this other bullshit now. How many resets have there really been here, guys? Okay, so War of the Worlds, San Francisco, the Great Flood and Fire. They talk about all the trees being gone because we deforested and built society. But when you look back and you look at all the ancient cities around the United States, they still exist under the mud. They're red brick, okay? The red brick empire, okay? They weren't made out of trees, okay? That's all false misnomer. Realistically, the War of the Worlds more than likely did happen as in the form of a reset. So if you go look at some old San Francisco buildings that were brick, literally laser cuts in the side of brick. Fire and earthquakes don't do that, folks. And Vanilla Sky. Look into the Vanilla Sky's concept. Not the fucking Tom Cruise movie, but Vanilla Sky, more like 1984, okay? Anyway, just imagine how many people were lost. And if you keep doing more research, there were electric cars in 1830. Okay, so one of my favorite YouTube channels of all, Divergent. If you want to learn more about reset history, go to the Divergent channel and watch his stuff. There is just a trove of content that's just really great. Probably my favorite YouTube channel. But anyway, War of the World, it predicted rockets, drones, lasers, nukes, directed energy weapons, motherships, all that stuff. And really, what I look at that is a kind of a human remembrance or a human connection to the Akashic record in fiction, okay? Or somebody who's disseminating truth wrapped in fiction, okay? And we know that, with William Mills Tompkins and, Solar Warden, that Star Trek is basically truth, right? A lot of it, okay? So if you believe William Mills Thompson, if you believe in Solar Warden and these things, but monopolism is a really big thing. We do not live in capitalism. And, resets, snaps of the glove, Thanos snaps, Fauci snaps with the glove. Anyway, they always, had to tell us their plans before they conduct them. So often the way they do that is through science fiction or through cartoons or through things that seemingly to our programmed minds are beyond the pale of reality. And obviously, as you can see, we have magic now. Okay, so it's magic. The iPhone is just simply, you can't explain. If anybody had to rebuild one from their own knowledge, they wouldn't be able to do it. So essentially, your iPhone, if you use one, if you use cell phones, all your daily technology is essentially magic. You don't know how to recreate it. You couldn't build one if your life depended on it. Maybe one person could, but not you, almost assuredly, okay? But with the cabal, the monopolists telling you what they are going to do ahead of time is part of their ritual magic, okay? So this has to do with a 6,000-year-old death cult. A lot of it does. At Jekyll Island, basically owning and controlling and inventorying the world is what they're trying to do now, and also create the real Matrix. So with VR and the meta and all that stuff. But for a long time, many facts were made to be false, and many falsehoods were made to be facts, just to program you into a sleeping state. Because to really believe in the American dream is to be asleep. You have to be completely asleep to believe in it. Okay? Just a little fact here, 1/1,000,000th of a gram of plutonium in your lungs is enough to kill you. Just so you know. Vannevar Bush was the head in charge of the Manhattan Project. Fact. Robert Oppenheimer quoted the Vedas, the ancient Hindu Vedas, often. Most notably talking about nuclear bomb viewing and becoming death. He was really out there and seemed a little awkwardly skinny and thin. But let's go beyond that. Adolf Hitler, in response to the American hysteria following the War of the Worlds broadcast, said, "This is evidence of the corrupt condition and decadence of democracy in America." And you know what? I'm not going to claim to say that sentiment was off. I mean, the decadence of the United States and the ignorance in the republic is pretty gross. In the same year, and I'm not a fan of, by any means, awful person, but he was on the nose as far as the blindness and the sleepiness of the U.S. populace, or the proletariat writ large. But in the same year as the Roswell crash in 1947, a Washingtonian pilot saw a 9-disc formation flying past Mount Rainier. So, I mean, these discs have been around forever. Like I said, in World War II, you have parts, you have ancient art that's hundreds of years old, thousands of years old, paintings, cave paintings, Ant-Men, all sorts of stuff. Carvings of helmets in South America and reliefs everywhere, okay, guys? I mean, this, like I said, astronauts have been around for a really long time. And in current era, Russians had the first satellite in space. So that's getting more back to the Cyrillic stuff, but they had stop and hover tech, and they dropped it in the United States, purposefully or not. Okay. Now, both sides still had nukes, so that's a big deal. I mean, mutually assured destruction is a thing regardless of how cool your airplanes are. So, I mean, that could be enough. I don't know. Who can say? But Vannevar Bush, in control of the Manhattan Project, owns Raytheon, owned Raytheon. And you start thinking about secret societies and big notable names like the Bissells, LeMay, Skull and Bones, all this stuff. So, I mean, if you're saying Skull and Bones is conspiracy, you just want to stay asleep. You just want to stick your head in the sand. You're basically that guy from The Matrix who says he's just enjoying his steak and wants to get plugged back in. I mean, it's okay. Admit it to yourself, but don't say we're wrong. Just admit that you want to be asleep in the Matrix, okay? Project Paperclip, German Nazi rocket scientists. I mean, who cares about effing rockets again? This is kind of like giving us a little bit of the info, but not all of it. A lot of the scientists we got were chemists, virologists, not just rocket scientists, okay? And again, the use of the U-2 as like the V2 rockets and stuff against England, they were effective, and some of these mega weapons that they created almost seemed like they were created because they could, and they were megalomaniacal engineers of steel and during this industry, and maybe that's, all the materials that they just, who knows, right? But if they had Hanabu and if they had Vril, then why? Well, maybe it's controlled war, controlled reset, war, you look at Bill Gates is talking about reducing the population by 10 to 15% if we do a really good job with vaccines and child reproductive services. I mean, come on, folks. So, did we really need rocket tech? Right? It's almost seemingly like there's rules the whole Earth had to follow, right? And I can see this considering we dropped those 2 nukes on Japan, and the implications of nuking the Earth are widespread and possibly multidimensional as far as the effects of nuclear explosions. So if you can get more to that research elsewhere, but Einstein was against paperclip and didn't like the let bygones be bygones approach, and now whether you think the sentiment was juvenile or because you think we needed those scientists, we needed the edge of technology, we need to stay at the forefront and maintain dominance, or whether it didn't matter because the atrocities committed. Einstein was against paperclip, okay? However, aristocracy had a huge role to play with this as far as Ivy League colleges, again, those elite societies like Skull and Bones within those Ivy League colleges, MIT, but now it seems secure, compartmentalized information. It just basically means you screw in this one screw on this one part and it gets handed to another person. That another person connects it to that part, and then all these people have this one specific job that's compartmentalized, so no one knows what the big thing looks like, and only a few people at the very top know how the cookie gets put back together. Okay, not how it crumbled, but how it gets put together, right? So now, I personally think that SCI can have some benefits if you are worried about spies, but really it would seem like it would be more cost effective to control the human's environment outside of work than it is to control their production at work. Okay, so really, I think that SCI is typically slow, dumb, wasteful, uninsightful, unaccountable, dirty, and illicit. You might think that my view of SCI is childish, but I never seem to be able to hear meaningful responses to the counter of that accusation. Truth matters, and it matters always. And falsehoods aren't going to help you, whether it's basic math or not. Okay, but also getting back to some of these cover stories, the U-2 or the SR-71 would have been seen as a flying cross from a trained observer, not a disc or a tic-tac. So oftentimes they explained it away with secret conventional craft, which is just not the case, because again, conventional craft have tails, they release a lot of heat and make a lot of sound, especially when they break the sound barrier with sonic booms, all that stuff. So if you've ever seen a quiet helicopter versus a loud one, or a quiet aircraft versus a loud one, fast, slow, if you've watched the skies a lot, you can be a trained observer and really see what you're looking at and be able to discern. But much of my thoughts pertaining to these topics, I assign a lot of hubris, ego, and a lack of confidence in those who were and are involved with this shit. It's like military intelligence. People think it's an oxymoron, because it is most of the time. Okay, and needless redundancy is usually just a waste of time, a waste of effort, a waste of resources, and a waste of our taxpaying money. And getting to taxpayers, we don't even want to get into that yet, because your social security number, SS, slave, okay, it always seems to come back to money, power, and control. Prove me wrong, okay? Cold War, the way I see it is, we'll fake it against each other, real otherwise, until we both reach where we need to be, and then maybe the real war begins. Okay, so back to Reagan's speech, back to Independence Day, sort of ideas. But another thing that leads me into this is, how can the powers of the world at the time? We live in the United States where you have to swear the Bible in court. The president's swearing the Bible. You have Russian Orthodoxy, you have the Middle East, you have Italy. You have all these countries that are seemingly Abrahamic in faith and believe in what seems to be the same God, yet we just kill each other in the masses and war all the time, and we don't stop warring. So it's, the people at the top have to be godless and out for money and control. That's it. They're Satanists, or they're godless and only care about money and control and don't care about human life. Because, if they're doing it in an abject defiance to what they claim their books to say, right? But thinking of the rules for the earth, for millennia, it seems that UFOs have been depicted in these paintings, stories, religious texts. Tell me where Elijah and Enoch went, okay? Stop and hover has seemingly been around for thousands and thousands of years. And it's apparently obvious that before the great cataclysmic flood of the past, that a very highly technological civilization far beyond our own ruled over the entire earth with one language, one architecture, and obvious love of pyramids for a long time. Now, again, getting into the Brookings report, Beadle Smith's advisory board was like of the first of the Brookings report style think tanks. And basically what that is the controlled narrative for the sleeping public. And in the Bible, it says, for men's hearts will fail them. I mean, a lot of people might just have a heart attack and die if they heard the truth all at once. And so that's why a drip is required. And so the drip, 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 drip of fiction, and then fiction turns into reality. So, there's a movie called Paycheck. I believe it was Ben Affleck, where, he's making a 3D TV, like a holographic 3D image. And they do a mind erase, like, Men in Black on him, so he doesn't commit perjury in court when he says he didn't reverse engineer the technology, so the company that was paying him would have that competitive edge. Well, now we have that technology, so it's only 25 years from science fiction to science fact, so they're speeding us up really quick. I mean, that delta is only 25 years between science fiction and science fact. How much before it's science future and science fact? It's not going to be 25 years, folks. It's going to be really quick. Okay, when did the Matrix come out? Early 2000s, right? And now the meta's being created. So a lot of what we hear about in fiction could also be access to the Akashic record of the future too. I mean, it might not necessarily be something that exists in reality right now, but because it exists in the mind, it will exist in the future, and vice versa, if you believe that time is a construct. Okay. But research, Forest of Mirrors, you can get into that stuff. Lies and gaslighting about the true nature of Area 51 really have caused great harm to the American public psyche. It's caused great pain, and it's honestly inexcusable. It's inexcusable. I mean, one death is always a tragedy, and a million is a statistic. Well, they're all tragedies. A million is a million tragedies. It's just a millionfold. Okay, folks, that's the way we need to see about it. One injustice to one person is just as bad as one injustice to us all. To you, to me, to everyone. Okay? Especially if you believe that we are all images and children of God. Okay? But, the U-2 spy plane, and all the rest of this conventional aircraft is just one layer of shit sandwich cover-up on top of another layer of SCI shit sandwich cover-ups, okay? The government is just one giant shitty club sandwich, which you are mostly not privy to. You slave away with your Nazi social security number that's borrowed against and spent into oblivion. We're 30 trillion in debt as the United States. The world in which you live is a fake matrix of Nazi garbage and lies. I mean, we imported the Nazi paperclip scientists because we had to, not because we had scientists that were of that caliber already. Why wouldn't we just send them to the tribunals and execute them if we already were where they were at or beyond? Great question, right? Unless it's all controlled reset. But, I mean, seemingly, if you really question the nature of your reality, the nature of your existence, the nature of how you operate in this world, you live in the Fourth Reich. I mean, prove me wrong, okay? But from the seems to me, we did not win World War II. And if you need evidence of that, Project High Jump Admiral Byrd, okay? Now, if anything, World War II, the Earth was basically a big Reichstag, and just another false flag conducted to drain, like I said before, all of the regions of the world and all the countries of the world of their talent, their strong, the brave men and women against a common enemy that was Hitler and the Nazis. Well, how much better to use the knowledge of something like that, but against your enemy, and to create an enemy, okay? So how much easier would it be to take control of the whole Earth, right? before a World War II or after World War II? What's easier? Definitely when a lot of the good guys are killed in war, and when a lot of the resources are drained in war, and you get to the end and you won, and you get to recuperate, and you get to take a deep breath and repopulate. Well, is that really the case? Is that really the case? Did we really win, or was it just a way to drain the world of the resources to take control of it? Okay, and it probably pretty easy with stop and hover tech, I would imagine. Okay, but even weirder is that German scientists caught by Russia, after having been drained of information, were allowed to live and reside in society afterwards. They didn't execute him or didn't, hang him for war crimes or anything. They're just like, okay, we got all your info, bye-bye. Which again kind of lends some credence to the fact that all the paperclip scientists, whether to Russia or the United States, were second-rate scientists, and that Germany, the high command in Germany, escaped with all their top-tier scientists. Okay, so that might be why Russia was dropping stop and hover craft in the United States, is because, well, no, we didn't know how that shit worked, and we all needed to help against this adversary we had no idea about. Okay, so there's just cover up on top of cover up, like I mentioned, and trying to figure it out is very hard. But one thing is stop and hover. I mean, you could theoretically take existing submarines, put stop and hover tech in them, and float them into space. So all those missing U-2 German subs, did they just float out of the water into space? Who knows? William Mills Tompkins says that's how we did it at the very beginning of Solar Warden. So one conclusion that I have reached with all of this is that most to all secret projects are layers of cover for black projects. And black just means off the books. So the secrecy, the constant war, the conventional propulsion, all cover, all garbage. Okay, the moon landing footage looks a lot like impact craters at the Nevada test range, and we'll get into this a little bit more. But maybe why you'll be shot on sight is that those moon movie studios that are located outside still reside on that test site. Okay, so if you saw that shit, they're gonna fucking kill you, right? I mean, they shoot on sight. They have complete, license to kill there. Now, there's current space footage that just came out, and it's inexplicable because there's floaters in the current space footage that we're seeing nowadays. And those are dead giveaways for filming in an aquatic environment where they can't control the particulate matter in every square millimeter of water. Okay, where weightlessness can be achieved. And again, weightlessness is different than mass reduction. I mean, it's similar, but it's different, because the theory of gravity versus the law of density, right? Laws, theories, okay? We can get into the laws of density and fluid dynamics later, but they do play a role in the cover-ups. But Khrushchev, this kind of leads credibility to the Russians knowing a little bit more, and they did have the first satellite in space. Khrushchev said the Americans are chortling over our incompetence, which sounds a lot more like mocking than an admission of incompetence, but the U.S. spun it as Khrushchev's admission of incompetence. So, you say one thing, well, I'm rubber, you're glue. You know what I mean? It's so stupid. But what comes down to that is ego and self-importance are national security risks. So like when Fauci, fascism says that if you attack him, or if you belittle his credibility, you're attacking science. It's the same thing. He's by no way science, and the scientific method is to prove yourself wrong over and over and over until you can't possibly prove yourself wrong anymore, which means that you're right. So it doesn't take too long to prove that 2 + 2 = 4, and you'll never be able to prove it wrong. So you just have to keep proving yourself wrong. Well, I mean, flip-flop Fauci, proves himself wrong every other day. So he's definitely not a representative of any kind of science whatsoever. But Emigrant Valley next to Area 51, it's kind of funny that it was named that, because emigrate means leave, right? So Emigrant Valley would be where people leave to emigrate from Earth. and that's right next to Area 51. Kind of funny how they named it. Again, I told you names play a big role. Up, down, left, and right names play a huge role. There have been always projects kept from POTUS, the President of the United States. So not even the President of the United States is going to know everything that's going on. And really, in the more current era, it's more and more and more the case because of the military-industrial complex and unelected bureaucrats, okay, and these positions of power within sections and sectors of the government that have literally unlimited budget and have don't have to report to anybody, okay. A couple facts here. The U.S. developed 75,000 nukes in 65 different types, sizes, and styles. 65. Okay? Sit down and try to make 65 different iterations of one thing. It's kind of hard. They made 65 different types, sizes, and styles of nuke. Okay? Kind of wild. But yes, a thermonuclear bomb could have set the Earth's entire atmosphere on fire, and yes, they tested the first one anyway. Okay, we'll get into the idea of first strike. So first strike is going back to stop and hover. It also goes back to ramjet nukes. So what a ramjet nuke is a nuclear-powered nuclear device. So nuclear bomb with a nuclear propulsion system that's powered by air in a ramjet. So you think that the air is coming in and it is igniting in the nuclear jet and it's carrying a nuclear payload. So essentially we were able a long time ago to be able to have nukes flying around the Earth or flying around Russia or flying around any body of land for seemingly infinite amount of time, months, years at a time, like a nuclear power plant would. But all your fuel is the air, so you just throw it and it just glides forever on this nuclear fuel, okay, or seemingly a really long time. And so that what first strike means is that there's no longer a mutually assured destruction, because if I choose to first strike you, like in Magic the Gathering, there's nothing you can do to prevent that combat loss. Your side is just going to die. Like, you die before you know you're in danger. So mutually assured destruction is I push a button, the nuke goes up, and you're like, oh, a nuke's coming. Well, I'm going to push my button too. And then this nuke goes, and then we all die, and there's no one around to win. That's mutually assured destruction. Well, first strike means I push the button, you don't know. You just die. Okay? It's so fast, you don't even have a chance to push your return button. That's first strike. So stop and hover equals first strike, and ramjet nukes equal first strike. Okay? So why all the wars and all the Cold Wars if there isn't really something connecting us all at the top, and this is all just drama and play, okay? So, why fake phony wars other than control and reset and total manipulation? So, by monopolists. Now, one thing that you'll notice when you do a lot of this research is that parts or out-of-place artifacts are completely unacknowledged by the mainstream. They will not be talked about in the news. They will not be covered. And you have to search really hard to find them. Now, it is easier to find today, but there were a lot fewer people doing this research in the past, and there was a lot fewer instances. But now with the internet, any person who finds an out-of-place artifact, it's up. We're going to find out about it, and then it's going to be in a documentary, and then it's going to get sold to the general public. And oftentimes it gets corrupted before it goes to the general public, but sometimes it doesn't, okay? So like the Atacama being, or any of these other things, okay? What is Project Twinkle? I haven't looked that up yet. That was just one of my notes. But the idea that a black operation can be legally binding in regards to secrecy is bullshit. So giving away your rights is also bullshit. And this is how Nazi death camps happen. And Bob Lazar is living proof, because a black operation by its very nature is illegal. So to do something illegal inside a black operation is still, it's all illegal. So there's nothing that breaks the rules. It's like there's no honor among thieves, so if that makes sense to you. So when people are convinced to take part and are complicit in black operations, they're threatened with all sorts of shit. But really, at the end of the day, nothing's legally binding that you do in a black operation because it's all illegal, okay? So what that really comes down to is that there's no moral impetus to be loyal to a black operation, and there's no moral impetus in its actions or own existence. So the fact that you are told you'll be killed for disobeying is all the proof you need for the lack of morality surrounding the entire topic. Okay, so what that brings you to is the words need to know equals criminal organization. Need to know means I'm not telling you, you don't have a need to know. It means I'm involved in criminal activity if I'm telling you, you have no need to know, right? Every person, human on this planet, every human being has a right to know, okay? Complete right to know. Now, and this gets a little bit further into laws and stuff, and I know I'm kind of getting in the weeds, but these are my notes, and this is my emotional feelings reading this book and reading the information in this book, but you're only ever morally bound. Laws, man-made laws are meaningless, period. The only laws that matter are God's laws, okay? And those laws are morally bound on your heart. It's written on your heart, okay? Now, this gets into alphabet fucking soup, okay? NSA, CIA, all these alphabet agency pricks, no morals. There's none in there, because otherwise, we would have access to free and clean technology. There's no excuse that every human on this earth doesn't have access to free and clean drinking water. The fact that there's so much abundance and yet we live in a world of scarcity is proof, all the proof that you need to know that evil has been in charge and that we live in a fallen world ruled by Satan. And that does lend a lot of credence to what's said in the Bible and what's said in Abrahamic texts, okay, and many other texts around the world. But we definitely live in a dual reality, a dualistic reality, the yin and yang sort of deal. But when they say it's an honor and a privilege to be read into a secret program, is not an honor and a privilege. It's more like a sentence to hell of secrecy and dismay, okay? I mean, you ever wonder why pilots are always happy-go-lucky and they're always having a good time, and then astronauts are seemingly alcoholic, depressed assholes? It's because pilots don't get read in and astronauts do, okay? So it's why Buzz Aldrin decked a guy when he challenged Buzz to swear in the Bible that he landed on the moon. It's because Buzz Aldrin has a soul and his emotions got the best of him, and he lashed out in anger because he was angry with himself. He was projecting his own anger against himself because he doesn't want to lie to God with his hand on the Bible. I mean, it's just that simple, guys. Okay, so and Bob Lazar, he's, whether he's knowing, unknowing, self-admitted COINTELPRO, he's COINTELPRO. Okay, was, now maybe isn't. Okay, but another fact, there are a maze of underground tunnels and a labyrinth that's crazy beneath all of our feet, regardless of where you're at in the earth. Okay, Janet Airlines, Jason Airlines, Raytheon Quick Kill System. So Raytheon Quick Kill System instantly cooks the organs and live tissues of whatever it's shot at. Now, this is could be what killed the occupants in the craft or caused the craft at Roswell to get shot down through this directed energy weapon. Well, that could be a cover. The cover is that it's radar, a really powerful, high-powered radar array, but maybe more than just radar. It might be the radar might be a symptom of the actual effect, right? Like, oh, we get a radar ping, great, but we're melting them. Okay, so it's a weapon with some maybe other benefits. Okay, and again, your rights can't be granted; they're inherent. They can't be stolen. They can only be controlled, and your mind can be corrupted. Okay, but just because you're a slave doesn't mean your rights aren't endowed by God and don't exist, and that your captors won't be held accountable. Okay, but there are 600,000 pages of Project Paperclip information that is classified. Now, let me ask you this. How long does it take to read 600 1,000-page books for one person? I mean, that would take 2 years at just a little under one book a day. Okay. Now that's saying you can read 1,000 pages in a day. Okay. Now what that equals is 1984, the other book written by H.G. Wells, one of the most popular ones. Okay. Now, a couple other facts to get into. Hitler had stealth tech in World War II, had stealth paint in the 30s. Okay. But in the vanity of war, supremacy, and domination, the U.S. handed over a bottomless budget of fake fiat currency, infinite manpower, us slaves, total secrecy against us slaves, and ultimate control of us slaves, the populace. Okay, so I mean, basically, they traded us all for vanity, war, supremacy, and domination over the earth. Okay, now. This is how bad it is, and where the mindsets of these people are, and how grossly greedy they are, and how they don't regard us as people. So Bernard Trump was on Area 51 and in charge of some shit, and he was a pile of shit, by the way. But all the secret money in the world this guy had, and he couldn't pay for some horses and cows from the neighboring farmlands. I mean, the hubris there. I mean, all he had to do was pay a little money and the problem would have gone away. But it's that hubris that's their downfall. It's that greed that's their downfall. And it's obvious, okay? And when there's corruption, it decays whatever it's associated with. So if you're corrupt, it will destroy you, right? And it destroys anything that's corrupt, eventually destroys itself. And it's a fact, okay? Same thing with corrupt math, corrupt programming. Eventually, it's going to be inert. Okay. Q clearance now is essentially licensed for criminal gaslighting, but Q clearance is real. Q clearance is a real clearance. Okay. Q is real as far as clearances go. And what clearance is access to information. So there's Q level information, folks. I don't care who you are. I met a bank rep the other day. She's a fucking retard. I just wanted to say that on camera. She's like, you don't believe in that Q shit, do you? Da, 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 da. I was like, you're a moron and you don't do any research and you just listen to a little stelter, okay? I'm sure you do. Don't pay attention to these people, folks. They're not smart as much as you may have thought they've been, okay? Most people are sleeping children. But let me restate the Oppenheimer quote to the New York Times, and this is Oppenheimer's quote. This is the best time in history for the non-ancient but nonetheless honorable past time of atom bomb watching. Well, if you read the words for what they are, it's actually they don't jive. So my interpretation is worst time, ancient, dishonorable times of past atom bomb viewing. So you can't say that it's non-ancient if you got all your information from 10,000-year-old book, okay, that has Vimanas in it, and how to build a Vimana, and how to build these crazy weapons of war from the past, okay? So, the New York Times obviously is going to not be the most credible source of information, and obviously is being sued left and right. Getting a little bit further into this, Mosler Safe Company commissioned to make a then $500,000 atomic bomb proof steel vault. Okay, so what this is telling you is that all the profits are always already baked into everything. The progression of tech, we're talking about conventional craft, they got to drip us into the future, which is now, and they also, even though they're doing that, they know that they can take advantage of every iPhone iteration, iPhone 6, iPhone 6S, iPhone 7. I mean, every tiny bit of progression, they're going to just juice us to the max and take us for everything. We don't get to skip to free energy. No. We're slaves. We're controlled slaves. We're controlled for our output and our energy, and they suck us dry. They're literally vampires. Okay. But the progression of tech is purposeful, and it's done to squeeze every dime out of us. Okay. Now, we are a resource, and they borrow against us. Not only do they use us as a resource, but they spend us, and then they borrow against us, and it's fake fiat, which is like bad on top of bad on top of bad. Okay, now I have lots of random thoughts flowing through my mind when I'm reading this book, and I had the song pop into my head, and it was like, "The wheel in the sky keeps on turning. I don't know where I'll be tomorrow." Okay, so those lyrics. I mean, we think about the Bible, wheels in the sky. We think about paintings, wheels in the sky. If you don't think you're being mocked to your face, you're stupid. They mock you to your face every way from Sunday. Every way, all the time. Once you can hear it, you can't stop hearing it, and just you get mad for a while, but there's nothing you can do, and eventually you just have to realize that's just part of how things are. Okay, but you're mocked to your face relentlessly. Okay, and you don't even see it. Symbolic of the nothing from like the never-ending story, and it's layer on top of layer on top of layer on top of layer. Okay, but so we'll get moving on. 100 CIA men lost their lives over the wall in Russia. So if they didn't purposely crash the UFO at Roswell, then what the heck are we sending CIA men into Russia if we have stop and hover, or if we have first strike, or, I mean, what's the deal, right? If we have, we have some of these technologies and we have some of these abilities like remote viewing, again, why spare them? Where did the men actually go? What were they actually doing there? Were these 100 CIA men, they just go away because they're more like an Enoch or Elijah? Or is it just different parts of the stupid government that don't talk to each other, and they are just getting lost over the wall because one part of government won't share information with another part of government, and there's this war here, there's this war here, there's this war here, there's this war here, and then we get along magically at the very top. And that makes all this drama, like I was saying, or cover for the big shit sandwich pyramid. Okay, and that really lends credence to the monopolists with mouthpieces as heads, like the Zuck fucks and all these other people. There aren't capitalists or Jekyll Island Kabbalists that are racketeering, crony, illegal, just awful schemes of evil, okay, secret societies and stuff like that, that just want power and domination, money and control. And getting out of that, getting back to Bob Lazar. Now, there's never any mention beyond Lazar's mention of craft being an archaeological find, which means is that, to my knowledge, we haven't heard about any other whistleblowers talking about these crafts being archaeologically dug up that are extremely ancient. But it does, since a lot of his stuff has been corroborated with Element 115 and some of this other stuff, does lend credence to a pre-flood breakaway or civilization like Atlantis that left and is now observing, right? Or it could have been someone, some of these craft could have been a visitor or a vacationer, or someone looking to set up shop and just crashed, or maybe it was wars from back then. Who knows? I mean, you could bury, a piece of abstract art made out of crazy shit from today, and somebody in the future be like, what the heck is this supposed to mean? What is it supposed to do? It must have a greater meaning than it's just a stupid piece of art, right? And obviously crafts aren't stupid pieces of art, but maybe the Atacama man was. Who knows? Right? Well, no one's going to really know. No one's going to tell us. But when it comes to gaslighting and Occam's razor, usually we want to use Occam's razor, but there's so many layers of shit cover-up. It's really hard to determine what is true and what science has been faked for our disinformation. Like gas, like swamp gas, right? Alan Hynek swamp gas. One thing that's interesting that was in the book, CIA, Barnes, guy from the CIA, his wife named Doris, read the classifieds for new classified work. I mean, good golly, this made me laugh out loud. I mean, it really made me laugh out loud. It's just stupid. I mean, it's just, in the town of Beatty, Nevada, is literally a ghost town or a spook town, i.e. CIA town. CIA people are spooks or ghosts or don't exist, right? So get this. In the town of Beatty, there are 9 gas stations, 11 churches, 1 whorehouse, and 1 airfield. So that's 9-11-11. So 9-11-11. And 45 years later, there's still no discernible idea what these were cover for. I'm like, yeah, right. This is alphabet soup cover. This is like that chicken, freaking place from Breaking Bad. It's just it reminds me of a place where you have a tunnel underneath with entrances and exits, and it's just a cover, right? It's another way onto the secret train station underground, or the secret railways, or the secret bases, and that sort of thing. And they all have their own entrances. And they were talking about a bum. There was mentioned in the book that there was a bum or a homeless person on the ground that knew another agent's name and face, and they had never met before. So if that isn't spooky, or if that isn't ghost-like, I don't know what to tell you, okay? But that kind of harkens into some of that John Wick stuff, where all the homeless are kind of like in this homeless club, and the other guy from The Matrix, the actor who I can't remember his name, but the Bum King, or the homeless king in the John Wick series, was also the same actor that played Morpheus in the Matrix. So this is all, okay, guys, sorry to tell you, they're laughing in your face, all right? And it's not a coincidence, not a quinky dink. But so Tesla, wireless comms, wireless power, 0-point energy, electromagnetic fields, HEE, MFG machines. I mean, who raided his hotel? Well, I mean, it seems like there's always been a clash between the Bushes and the Trumps, even going way back, involved with Tesla as adversaries. And it seems like there was a lot of information that's been known for a long time. Like, if you read Ingersoll Lockwood's book, Little Baron Trump Visits D.C., I mean, they either have access to this Akashic record, looking glass technology, or these family and bloodlines go really far back, and we don't even really know a piece of it, okay? Or it's all of the above, okay? Like I said, a lot of things aren't mutually exclusive. They can be mutually inclusive. But another thing, how the heck does S4 at Area 51 back then, the only radio signal they receive out in the desert is Spanish broadcasts of bullfighting? Now, this seems really cryptic, and this was told to Annie Jacobsen by the person she was interviewing, and this is like reading between the lines. Like, he's telling her, because he can't tell her everything, but he's telling her a weird story that is meant to be mirrored through another type of looking glass. So when I hear of bullfighting and spoken Spanish, I really hear of bull. I think bull stocks. I think New York. I think about 9/11 again. I think about red flags. I think about bulls. I think about the running of the bulls. I think about bullfighting. I think about Italy. I think about the Vatican. And I think about the Axis powers, right? Or all of that. And it does kind of lend some credence to the Vatican shit, because there is a secret archives, and there are some theories out there that the Vatican has had secret communication with other entities for a really long time, and that's where a lot of the technology comes from. So there's a trade agreement almost. Okay, now Chrome Dome was replaced by ramjet nukes. So if we're talking about ramjet nukes, the predecessor to that was Chrome Dome. So similar were the nuke craters at Area 51 to actual moon craters that, in voice transcripts from the Apollo 16 and 17 moon missions, the astronauts twice referred to the Nevada test site craters, those names at the Nevada test site, not the craters named on the moon. I mean, good golly, guys. I mean, how can a flag flutter in the wind on the moon? And if it's in a vacuum and there's no atmosphere, and why no stars in the moon photos, and why no Apollo blast crater from the landing vehicle arrival? And there's a lot of shit. Now, Mr. Casing, an engineer and analyst from Rocketdyne, who designed our Saturn rockets, okay, noted that what was being shown was not intuitively real. So this is a rocket engineer who's like, that shit's fake. He's like, I'm in this shit and that shit's fake, right? So, I mean, we're not talking like, conspiracy theorists. We're talking about Rocketdyne engineers. And in Casing's interview with Couric, he said the moon sets are still at the Nevada test site, and that's why it'll be shot on site. So, I mean, he in no uncertain words said that himself in an interview with Couric. Now, Buzz Aldrin, like I said, assaulted a man's face when he was asked to swear in the Bible, okay? So he couldn't bring himself to light before God. And again, why are pilots always happy and why are astronauts always sad? And what did William Shatner just say after coming down from his space trip? And what happened to that billionaire astronaut shortly after? He died. Okay, so the civilians are supposedly getting in space, and they're still trying to keep it quiet somehow. Anyway. Rand Corp produced nuclear drills for the creation of DUMS, and DUMS is an acronym for Deep Underground Military Base, except there's a different acronym that they use. Like, we're allowed to use the word UFO, but UAP is what they call it, right? So they're always changing the names of these corporations and of these acronyms for the names for same things to keep us off the path, and then also to make fun of us when we're off the path. Okay, we're not using the right technical words and acronyms. So they had the ability to create about 3 miles per day on these nuclear drills, and so that is back to the maze of the labyrinth of tunnels underneath our feet. And let's just read between the lines here. They said that they didn't implement it. They did. Okay. Now, lifelong security agent Mingus, I automatically named him Mingus the Dingus, and he worked coal mines as a kid, and he was literally born into slavery, and then his career as an adult, was bleak slavery as a security for Area 51. I mean, this dingus egghead basically had a completely deniable life. Like, his life was deniable. Like, his own existence was deniable. I mean, really, at the end of the day. And so, what an awful way to be. Just completely secret life. Deniable life. Russia as a slave. Now, Russia, and he was out in the middle of nowhere, too. I mean, imagine how boring that would have been. But Russia created a wilderness of mirrors, and we made our own with stealth. Big whoop. Again, Hitler had stealth, hence Project Paperclip. Stop and hover existed, hence Project Paperclip. But it seems like Russia may have been further than we were at the time, or got better scientists from Germany than we did, but it always seems that both sides, Russia and the United States, got second-tier, second-rate scientists. So Swiss, Austrian, German, Alps, all demonicists, and effectively traded their souls for tech with demonic agents in a literal or figurative way. Okay. Now, official policy in our own U.S. government is to cover up embarrassment, and that is a fact. Now, this fact is referenced in the movie Two Guns. This doesn't happen in the Navy. Okay. So, if you don't think that cover-ups happen, it's actually by policy that they do. Okay. Now, the website, I thought this was kind of wild, that www.above-topsecret.com was mentioned in the book, and there are 2.4 million pages of content on that website. Now, and that seemed like it was referenced to her as well. Now, the New World Order equals the Fourth Reich, equals secret society, and equals why there are kids referenced and experimented, right? And then also blackmail kids, and that seems more like Epstein crap. But it seems like the F-117 Nighthawk was reverse engineered craft for founded disclosure, not invented tech. So when I say founded, it means found dead. So found dead tech, like archaeological dig or crash dig, whether it's fiber optics, whether it's stealth, whether it's this or that. You get back into reset lore, like I was talking about with the channel Divergent. Founded is much different than erected. Erected means you fucking built it yourself. Founded means you found it empty and dead, and you claimed it, and you put your own placard on it that says founded, right? Not erected, founded. It's similar to inoculated versus vaccinated, okay? Just to be clear. Now, reverse engineered, basically the F-117 was reverse engineered for 50 years of cover-up just for us. Okay, great. We have F-117 was reverse engineered and put out there just for us. It's another drip. It's just another part of the conspiracy shit sandwich. Now, we get back to The Simpsons. We're talking about The Simpsons, the escalator with Trump. Simpsons, now we get into words, we get into the Lord's English, we get into speech and syllables and vowels. Simpsons equals simple son equals son of simps or stupid imps. They're three-fingered. The three-fingered is the okay sign. Okay, now, I'm not doing this because I'm part of it. I'm just telling you. I'm showing you this is used to make fun of you. And Jim Carrey did this to make fun of you on what's his stupid name show. He's awful. Used to be a co-host on the Man Show with Corolla. But anyway. They paint Carrie as crazy because he's done with their charade, right? Now, so the Simpsons are three-fingered, they're dumb, they're yellow, which yellow means they're scared or they're cowards, okay? They're happy and sad, they're stuck in their own story. They always deal with calamity and they're always learning from their lessons of stupidity. I mean, that's what it is. And that's how they make fun of us again. And they're also telling the future and they're telling the story in The Simpsons of us, okay? Which is really sad and scary all at the same time. Now, you get back into the other stuff, Project Ornithopter with Da Vinci, Tesla. I mean, basically bad and New World Order actors are stealing from these great minds. And, Tesla lived in a hotel, which would say he was probably remanded to a hotel, much like some of these other people that were remanded to their quarters way back when. And, now we have graphene nanobots, which is just fantastic, isn't it? But going further on, we have a lot of these names, Bond, Doolittle, LeMay. These are shareholders or slave holders or corporations that own slaves, i.e. us, birth certificates and social security numbers. Children of the Corn would be CIA agents. Corn Pop would be referenced by Jojo Magoo. Jojo Magoo's family got corn popped by a corn farmer, and Corn Pop was a very bad man. Okay, so that all equals we will kill your family. So if you want to go back and look into all this stuff, corn and popping, like a movie, Jojo Magoo, movie we're seeing now, in real life, in real time, it all does this, okay? Now, who trained Bin Laden and educated him? I'll give you one guess. Who covered up his death within 24 hours with a burial at sea? I'll give you one guess. How many Muslims are buried at sea? I'll give you a guess. No autopsy, no nothing. Big, giant cover-up. Oh, and what happened to the SEALs who conducted the raid at the Bin Laden compound? And you know what? The only one left was the trigger man. Weird. All the rest died in a Chinook accident. Wow. Only one left to tell the tale and take the bribe. Oh, it's sad. Again, it's really wild. But basically, SEALs and PJs all have a license to kill and be killed by their government. Edmund Hull, State Department diplomat in the CIA, was involved in assassination plots. Okay, Q is also a reference for unmanned. Okay, i.e., artificial intelligence or controlled from a distance. Okay, so Q clearance, controlled from a distance, or Q authorization, or Q scriptwriter, or Q computer, or playmaker. So either controlled from a distance or artificially controlled. Okay, now with the Predator drone coming out, that gave the combination of two things: reconnaissance and retaliation. So they made that as a big deal, but that really brings us closer and closer to stop and hover, because stop and hover is also equivalent to recon plus retaliation in the same device. Okay, so getting a little bit further beyond that, there's a real title of a job called Wicked Engineer. Okay, Wicked Engineer is quoted as saying, playing the game changes the game, which is kind of like harkens to like this procedurally generated reality based on input, okay, and also harkens to like a forest of mirrors and like maybe a procedurally generated Mandelbrot set of reality, which is kind of hard to wrap your mind around. But if you can wrap your mind around an 8D lattice Mandelbrot reality that's procedurally generated, that has an infinite amount of information in a finite space, you're getting really close, okay? But the wicked problem that stems from that is eradicating evil's presence, nature, and manifestation in this realm beyond the ability to recognize evil. Okay, so eradicating poverty among humans is next. Violence and ill wills is the number one wicked problem. Now, a lot of people think that the reason why there are demonic presences and why demonic infestation can happen is because that evil was somebody somewhere in the galaxy decided to eradicate evil completely, and those that eradicated evil ended up as disembodied evil. Now, in a dualistic reality, you need to understand what evil is so you can appreciate good, and that's why we all want to be on that side of the yin and yang where we live in the light and we just have the knowledge of that tiny little bit of darkness so we can appreciate living in the light, okay? But if you got rid of that darkness, then that darkness would have to go somewhere. It would be disembodied evil, okay? So if you look at it from that point of view, it does make sense. Now, wicked problem is kind of like a double speak, because wicked is a problem. Like problem is wicked. Like it's the same thing, right? It's kind of like an oxymoron, but different. Like United States is an oxymoron. It's either United State or divided states, right? So like military intelligence would be an oxymoron, so to speak, in this regard, like with Iraq and just all the rest. James Killian had complete carte blanche and was not required to tell Congress the truth. So if there's any one person who's not required to tell Congress the truth, then why even pay your taxes at this point? I mean, really, fuck these people. Fuck these people. If there is one person who's unaccountable, no one should be accountable, in my opinion. Okay. Now, here's another conspiracy. I call it the Sputnik conspiracy. Obama. So had a conversation, not with his peer, but with the representative of his peer for Putin, as in needing more space and having more flexibility later. Well, needing more space could be needing more space, right? And having more flexibility later, that was all caught on a hot mic. You can look it up. ITEC Corporation, ITEK, made the Corona satellite to locate you and maybe possibly in the future turn you off or control you, spy on you for sure. And ITEC, EYE, all-seeing eye. I mean, it's freaking hilarious, guys. Now, I was talking about DUMBs before. UGF is their acronym, Underground Facility, okay? They want you speaking dumb, okay? This is how funny it is. They want you speaking dumb because they have UGF, and they're mocking you by dumb. Okay, so UFO versus UAP. Okay, you label it a conspiracy, you gaslight, you change the meaning and definition of the same concept used, and then you mock them and you make them feel crazy. That's how they do it. Now, don't even get me started with Babel and language, because I could give you a really high-level dissertation on language, the Lord's English, and the Word, but we won't go there. Q cover is basically black budget. Black budget is not a line item, so if you want to know or see evidence of black budget, you can just go to usdebtclock.org for the reported and actual spending, the debt, all the stuff, the black items. So there's red items, green items, and then there's black. The black might make you question some things, okay, as far as those really big numbers. But there's huge discrepancies. There's always been discrepancies. But as I've been watching usdebtclock.org for the last however long, that discrepancy has been disappearing over the last couple of years, which is weird. I mean, that black budget is shrinking. Okay, folks? Which means we're winning. Okay? At the end of the day, it means we're winning, or they're dying and they're crumbling from their corruption, because corruption is a virus and they're dying from their own virus. Okay? Now, America honestly did make a deal with the devil with the Nazi paperclips and did rewrite history like Orwellian 1984 with 600,000 pages of revisionist history. So essentially, it's a Roman classification. I mean, we are living in a Roman matrix because there are like literally 600,000 pages of truth that is turned into falsehood. I mean, essentially, since you don't get to read the 600,000 pages, there's a 600,000 pages equivalent story that you've been told. And so whatever story you've been told has a mirror in truth that equals that 600,000 pages. Okay. So you must think of it in those terms. But again, Roswell had 2 crash sites, 3 bodies that we know of, 2 are alive. And this is where we get into the dark stuff I gave you the warning about. Okay, so the warning is that they were human guinea pigs, and now these pilots, quote unquote, were unusually petite, even for a pilot, appeared as children, young teens, or jockeys. They were basically kids less than 5 feet tall, grotesquely deformed, and each grotesquely deformed in the same manner as the other. Unusually large heads, abnormally shaped, oversized eyes, not healthy humans. Okay, only 5 men from EG&G eggheads, the Philadelphia experiment, were key holders to the facility. Most clandestine facilities since the Manhattan Project. Vannevar Bush, Secret Society Satanist, Satamist. So I'm going to get into this. So Satanist means Satan. The Great Satan means the Great Administrator, or the Great Satan, or the person who rules the earth is Satan, or the Great Administrator. So Satan actually means administrator. And Satan is actually what Satan or Satan came from. Okay, so who would you think is the Great Administrator or Great Satan now? That would be akin to Mengele. It would be another Fauci. Okay, so and even Jojo Magoo said, "Oh, I wonder who's president," because he doesn't feel like the president because it's really surely seems like Fauci's in charge, right? So there are these kids that are literally born classified. So more than just a figure of speech, something that is literally born, then classified. Not written, not said, dictated or labeled, but freaking born in reality, like Jason Bourne, okay? Jason Airlines, okay? So you have to consider that these Nazi experiments with genetics and breeding programs, they're breeding kids to look like aliens, to have desirable qualities to look like aliens. So if you found a deformed child with no thumb and they had 6 fingers and they're really long, well, you're going to start breeding those so you can start faking alien invasions, right? And over decades. Now, the German... Now, and we'll get into that in just a second. So, no German on either side paperclip or Russian, it seems, had the know-how behind the stop and hover tech, which lends credence to our second-tier German scientist paperclips. Like, as in, all the first tiers were breakaway or left. Okay, now probably to Antarctica and what Admiral Byrd experienced down there in high jump, but they're definitely second-tier German scientists that we got, and all the first-tier teams seem to disappear. And you'll see this, and they make fun of you in movies like Superman and The Watchmen. Okay, these evil people down in Antarctica, they're in control of seemingly everything. Well, think about who signed the Antarctic Treaty and why you're not allowed to go there, and why you're not allowed to go past a certain southern parallel. Okay, so figure it out. But these 2 aviators that were alive, like I said, there's a jello substance already in these upright tubes attached to life support stasis systems that are already built and operable for the receipt of these life forms. Okay, so once these healthy children were once dwarves, twins, all messed up sort of kids with selected traits, bred for specific COINTELPRO, Stalin and Mengele type shit, that had removed adult craniums attached to their heads. So they took their cranium off these kids' heads and put adult craniums on their heads to make them look bigger. And they took plaster casts of deformed kids so they could figure out the ones. I mean, they did a lot of this in the internment camps in World War II. So they took casts and molds of kids, and they're looking for the most alien or abnormality looking features, like 6 long fingers, no thumbs, and things like this. And they even removed and transplanted eyeballs with these kids. Okay, that's why they called them kids. Now, because they were kids, not like they're aliens because they're small, but they're actually children. Okay, so they injected these children with hair-losing substances, i.e. cancer treatments, i.e. bad shit to make them lose their hair, made them really sick. Like they said, they're unhealthy. Now, maybe this is cover up, maybe this is true, maybe it's both, but Stalin, hoped that he could basically Hollywood Area 51, the CIA and the DoD, into instigating a Martian invasion panic akin to the Orson Welles radio broadcast. To me, this just seems more like a layer of shit sandwich, but who knows? But Truman didn't reveal the kids and the Russian fake UFO invasion because we were doing the same thing. And the evidence for that is we already had the tanks ready to receive them. Okay. Now, we performed experiments. As a fact, the United States performed experiments on handicapped kids and prisoners. So, and oftentimes the people that were talking about this, to Annie Jacobsen said, but I'm not a doctor, I'm an engineer. And they told these people, we want engineers, not doctors. Okay, they wanted these EG&G egghead engineers. Okay, EG&G egghead engineers. Okay, it all lines up. Now, they basically work on these Nazi-inspired black projects because Vannevar Bush told them to. Okay, and when did it end? It was still happening as of the 80s. So for 40 years after Roswell, we kept on experimenting on retarded children and stuff like that. Now, if what has been discussed in regards to the truth that I'm talking about right now would amount to a single crouton, then, or a small, I don't want to do that, a small crouton, right, would be in comparison to the overall truth. The plate, the tables, the chairs, and everything added together at the dinner table. And it's funny that the engineer made that reference in regards to dining, okay? But if you know a crouton of the truth, the real truth is the whole dining table and everything there. So we're only going like over a tiny fraction of, like I said, the 600,000 pages that you don't get to know about. And basically... the reverse to those 600,000 pages is the proletariat story that we get told, so we don't get to understand the truth. And basically, right now, I think that the need for disclosure has surpassed the need for secrecy. And I don't even think it's the need. It has, I think, a lot to do with the Great Awakening and the singularity. And I think, again, they're using the idea of the singularity against us with AI, and that we are the singularity as in we're waking up out of our sleep. Okay, so we are attaining a new level of consciousness. The human beings, by and large, are evolving and are connecting more like... an ant colony. Ants all communicate to each other through pheromones and stuff like that. They build wonder structures, and they're very cooperative, and they really care about their colony, and they remove sickness from their colony. All sorts of crazy stuff. But we're becoming more connected physically with our devices and physically with our minds. Okay, so that's part of the Great Awakening. It's etherical, it's physical, it's literal, it's everything. Okay, now. The Atomic Energy Commission, who changed its names 4 times, by the way, was still in violation of the Nuremberg Code from the 1950s all the way through the 80s, and who knows what they're called now and if they are. But these experiments that they were doing to children, retarded children, orphan boys, these kids were taken from the Fernald State School located outside Boston. And what was claimed in the book is that Clinton was close to this discovery, but they kept it from him. Likely he was implicated in a blackmail scheme to prevent him from digging further. Okay, so we know what that blackmail scheme looks like. He hasn't said, and no one knows who inherited the 5 keys to the facility. And the 5 keys, good grief, we can go into 5 keys 1,000 ways for some Sundays. But again, children, not healthy pilots. And since they weren't healthy pilots, these craft most likely were controlled from the mother craft, which they had on radar, which was coming down up from Alaska. And so this craft would have been that big tic-tac shaped craft known as a vril that Haunebu, or the Haunebu would be the disc-shaped craft, was deployed from. Okay, so that means that Russians had vril? I don't know. So that's where it gets really crazy because of the Cyrillic. So it couldn't have been the Russians at all, right? And that's what makes it really hard to discern. So, but this information has been protected from us and kept from us by the Atomic Energy Commission through draconian classification rules. So if you look in the etymology of draconian, the first reference is from the Draco star cluster, and that reference is close to 1,000 years ago with no other source of information that I've been able to find. Simply, you do not get to know what and who are Draco or from Draco. And again, they make fun of you. Draco Malfoy, they from Slytherin, like literally they make fun of you to your face. Okay, if you don't get it now, you Simpson, right? But Vannevar Bush experiments persist through the 70s. They took kids from the Dixon Institute for the Retarded, the New Jersey State Colony for the Feeble-Minded. They tested vaccines on these kids for malaria, influenza, STDs. They did all sorts of shit. Again, Vannevar Bush owns Raytheon. Raytheon means light from the gods, equals Satanists, equals Luciferians, equals Luciferian, etc., etc. Now, we can get really into the weeds, but teenage mutants, mutant kids, kid killers, kids that are killers, turtles, like mutant turtles, like reptilian mutants in a half shell, which would be a UFO, Minecraft, turtle power, like underground lair where a rat lives in a sewer named Splinter Cell. Splinter learned in a bird cage, underground, caged, okay? Learned from Shredder, the Foot Clan, i.e., it's just, again, they make fun of you. 1,000 Waves from Sundays. Red, orange, green, blue, yellow. You have the Simon game. Simon Says. Simon Peter Says. Simon the Zealot. Okay. Simon Says, do what the Simon Peter the Zealot says. You robot. Stuff like that. Everything. It's just a giant forest of mirrors. All of it. Like, literally, they make fun of you through Project Mockingbird. Area 25... is there also no mention of William Mills Thompson in the entire book, which I thought was interesting because he's still alive, or maybe he recently died. Nuclear-powered spaceship to Mars and back, 124 days round trip. This was invented 16 stories tall. Now, 16-story spaceship just sounds like a submarine turned vertically. Okay, Project Orion is what it was called. Giant Tic Tac with 16 stories. Again, crew of 150 with stop and hover technology in it. So... basically, they're referring space as a sea, and you can have space referred to as a sea if you reference Genesis, okay, from the Bible. Now, Project Orion is basically the 16-story Coke can, which is really funny, partially designed by Coca-Cola. You can't make this up. Basically, it's a nuke pooper. It would poop nukes, and it would just get closer and closer to the speed of light. So that's why they could go to Mars and back in 124 days, or one single trip, 62 days. Okay. Now, a general is quoted, whoever builds and controls an Orion first controls the whole Earth. And I agree with that 100%. Now, they said there was no more explosions allowed in the atmosphere at Jackass Flats because they're just raining too much radiation and stuff. So, but that might be where one of them first took off from. And, they just didn't build one. But Q clearance and hangars... were described in the book. It really reminded me of the entrance to Wakanda from the original comic book. Now, I'll show that comic book to you. I do have that edition about the original depiction of Wakanda and entering Wakanda. But it's basically entering the side of a mountain that's camouflaged. It looks like a mountain, like you crash into it. But essentially, the Q clearance in these hangars and the Area 51 basically camouflaged doors in the side of a mountain, just like Wakanda. If you read between the lines... they also talked about there being a tarantula problem in Jackass Flats. Just go watch the movie Arachnophobia, watch the film, rewatch it until you understand, please. Okay, there's a dark web. Okay, there's a Nazi Hydra, Black Knight satellites. Okay, now page 307 of the book refers to these hangars and describes this walking into this hangar. Literally, I think about the movie Independence Day and watching somebody walking down where that craft flew out of. It's just literally the exact same. And when the nuke engine ran, it rained toxic debris everywhere. Apparently, Phobos, this first nuclear engine, overheated due to faulty gas gauge they're talking about, created a big explosion. I was kind of smelling bullshit. I think this is a cover story for this nuclear engine. I think this whole Phobos is a cover story for it, because there's no way that there would be a faulty tank gauge. If you're conducting like a nuclear engine, you would have like multiple redundant pipes attached to multiple banks of farmed storage, of gases that you need to conduct your experiment. Like it'd be redundancy on top of redundancy for this sort of thing, like a farm stomach system for these gases, and there would be no faulty gauges. There would be like many gauges, right? So it's just bullshit. And redundancy is the hallmark of the military. So I mean, you know that what a cover up smells like. You can see it, and either that or any need to have know should have never existed after that because of their sheer ineptitude, and there would have been no confidence, and there always been a policy of no embarrassment. But when do you have no more cover-ups? When is the embarrassment too large for even the military to stomach? I don't know. Who knows? Maybe it's not. Maybe there is no. Maybe there's no capacity to how big of an embarrassment they are willing to stomach by covering up. So, because there's ineptitude too. I mean, when do you just get sick and tired of ineptitude? But after that, nuclear reactor sales by the Atomic Energy Commission across the country reminded me of playing SimCity. It's like nuclear. I mean, they put out thousands of nuclear reactors all across the country in every fucking city. Like it literally, like seemed like I was watching SimCity in my head. I was reading part of this book. Okay, now there are just government lies and cover-ups galore when it comes to cancer, localized cancer in certain localities in the United States, towns, radiation, water table poisoning. I mean, you even have water table poisoning in Camp Lejeune. Marines can't even drink water at Camp Lejeune. And now they have gasoline in the water in Hawaii. I mean, it's just really bad stuff, guys. But in the last of it, you know, it's all a big mob. And when I think about the mob, it's a protection outfit. And when I think about that, I think of rackets. I think of Ponzi schemes for power and money. You know what I mean? And this is a lot of what I think Hitler was doing as revenge for World War I, because you know he was a nationalist socialist, and you know if your debt holder is dead, then you know you don't have to pay him back. And I think that was one of the big reasons why he attacked all of Europe, is because Germany was being strangled with reparations for World War I. I mean, that's going a little bit further into it, but again, all this leads to just total and mass destruction, and even he could have been a pawn in this big game of drama. Okay, so Area 51, if you read this book, a lot of the stuff that I talked about is conjecture, but there's a lot of facts in there, and those facts will change your paradigm forever. The kids, Stop and Hover, those are the two biggest ones, and they're the two scariest ones, okay? And they still relate to today. And with that note, I'm going to sign off, you guys. I didn't see really any questions or live chat, but who knows how this is working. Again, first time back in a long time. But I do hope that a particular YouTuber, in general, a Magic the Gathering player, does watch this and does comment and does come by and drop some info and some thoughts, as well as the rest of you out there in YouTube land. But really appreciate you taking the time to listen and to watch, and I should be and hopefully be doing this a lot more soon. With that, I say adieu. God bless you. And I'm really praying for all the people on this planet, and God exists and good exists, and therefore God won and good